Welcome to the 2023 Craftathon. Spring Craftathon. I can't even believe it. I'm so excited. I am Amy with Amy Sadler Designs, and today we are going to be making the most plush, soft, precious baby blanket. We're going to hand knit it. The only tools you need are yarn and scissors, and you don't even need scissors until the end. So I wanted to go over a couple of things before we get started today, because I'm gonna show you the video. So I will try to make it as real-time as possible. So if you aren't a beginner and you want to fast forward through some of the more monotonous parts of this video, feel free. But if you're someone like me who likes to watch like every detail in real time, I'm going to try and do that and make that available for you as well. So some things I want to go over ahead of time is the kind of yarn that I'm using, which is I get the Yarn Bee at Hobby Lobby. I also have it linked for you here in the description in my bio. And this is pink. They have all kinds of colors. Using this, I'm in my workshop and I have this stainless steel worktop table that I use. I have two of them in my workshop, and I will link those for you as well. You might think I'm just covering it to make it look pretty with this canvas, but that is this is actually cream denim fabric. This serves a purpose as well when I'm making a blanket. Having it on some fabric like this will be helpful to you, and you'll see why once we get into the video a little bit. So I am going to be working on this table that moves, and I'm using this cloth on purpose. The next thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is you'll need to know two kinds of knots for this project, and the first one is a slip knot. When you pull the yarn out, your yarn will have a piece that kind of goes into the center like this. That is going to be the end of your yarn that you can pull out like that. So that's always where you want to start. You don't need to cut this to find an end. That will end up making kind of a mess. So you want to find your end piece and pull that out and start here. This is what I like to call my working yarn. And then I'm getting ready to make a tail. So I'm going to take this, I like to go shoulder to shoulder for my first bit here. So I'm going to take it and make a loop. So grab it right about here. It doesn't matter where. Shoulder to shoulder, grab it and twist it. Then I'm going to, with it twisted this way, I'm going to grab my working yarn, which is this side with the big, this is my tail, and pull it through and then tighten it like this. Now if I'm doing that, I'm going to do it in real time in just a second, but because that looked kind of janky, but that's okay. So here, this is my tail now, this is my loop, and this is my working yarn over here. So if you hear me refer to those three things, tail, loop, working yarn. So now this loop is kind of big. I can fit my whole hand through it. So the reason it's called a slip knot is because I can slip this in and out of this knot right here. So it slips. That's why it's called a slip knot. So I want to make it about where I can get these 4 fingers in, because I'm going to be grabbing. So I want to make it about that big. And let me show you again in real time. So I'm going to slip that out like we just are starting. I'm going to twist it. And see, this is what you're going to do too. I do it every time. I'm going to twist it away from me. So away from me, and then grab my working yarn and then pull it tight like that. So now I can slip this. I want it about the size of my 4 fingers, and then I'm going to start making one long chain, and then I will, when in just a few minutes when the video starts, I will show you this in detail, but we are just going to make a hand knit chain, and we're gonna do, that's the next thing. So for the purpose of this baby blanket, I'm going to do 20 stitches. So each time I make a loop is a stitch. So for the baby blanket, you're gonna want 20. If you want to do like more like a lap blanket for yourself, you're gonna want to do 30. And then if you want like a full-size blanket, probably you're gonna have to measure it out and do maybe 40 to 45 stitches across. And then as we get into the video, you'll see how to move on. Have a glass of water nearby because the little fibers do float and get in your throat. And also, what else was I going to tell you that was important? Oh, so as you're working, give yourself plenty of slack. I have an apron that I wear. I wear this to work in to do a lot of projects that I do because it has a large pocket, and I can stick my working yarn down in my pocket so that it doesn't fall on the ground, because it will collect any, and then you just have to roll it with a roller. But to keep it off of the ground, I put it in my apron pocket. And then once your blanket gets further along, you can put it on the blanket. It just, to keep it out of your way when you're working, is going to be a little bit easier for you. And let's get into the video. Okay, so here we are. We're gonna pull our yarn out of our tip. Remember, don't try to cut it somewhere to find the end. The end should be tucked in. We're gonna make our slip knot like we just went over, shoulder to shoulder, make your loop, pull your working yarn through, and then you have perfect slip knot. Now we're just gonna take our 4 fingers and make the loop and grab our working yarn and pull it through each loop. And that's called a stitch. So we're gonna do that for 20 stitches. So here I am counting. Now this is a game of counting, making these blankets. However, for me, it's such a good way to relieve stress and kind of forget my anxiety for a minute, because I'm so focused on what I'm doing in front of me that I kind of forget my problems. So here I have my 20 stitches, and then I have my loop at the end. So we are going to leave that loop at the end there, and then you see me making a new loop, and then I'm going to take that through my first stitch down and through, and then I'm just going to make a loop for each of the 20 stitches that we make. You're going to make a loop and put it down through a stitch, down and through, and then down and through. So you're just going to make a loop and down and through each of your 20 stitches. And once you're doing that, it's really easy to see which one is next. So you're just going to make sure that you make a nice loop. They're all about the same size, and I'm saying they're down and through, down and through. So sometimes people you want to go up and over, but honestly, the best way possible is to go down and through. That's going to give you a really beautiful braid look on one side of your blanket and a chain look on the other. So you're going to want to go down and through, and then down and through all 20 stitches. And then when you get to the end, you're going to leave that loop out and count. Always want to be counting your loops before you start again, just to make sure that you're all golden. And then you're just going to start over. You're just going to go down and through each loop. So you're going to make a loop and put it through the loop that you just laid down, leaving the one on the end. So your 20th loop is going to kind of look like it's stuck out like a sore thumb, and that's okay. Yeah, there I am going through, and that's where I stuff my working yarn in my pocket, because my apron pocket, because it's just so much easier to take care of that way. So my loop, that's my loop on the outside. I've gone through it, and then I'm counting, and I'm just going to start right there on the next loop that's not sticking out. You'll note once you get started, you'll notice what's happening. So you're going to go down and through. Oh yeah, I forgot to count. Count again, Amy. Make sure there's 20. And then you're going to go again. This is such a repetitive job. Down and through, make a loop, down and through, get yourself some slack. And you're just going to continue this process until I used 3 skeins of yarn on this particular blanket. Here it was my first skein of yarn, so I need to tie, so I'm going to tie a square knot. I use my apron again for my measurement. I'm going to do right over left, left over right, and then pull your working yarn. And don't pull it too tight. You can break yarn, and I have done that before, so just pull it taut and make sure that it doesn't slide like a slip knot. Right over left, left over right, pull it tight. And then you can see my tails went through that loop right there. That's okay. I don't need to do anything with those tails. I'm not going to cut them short. I left myself 4 or 5 inches. I'm going to tuck those through the rest of the blanket once I'm done making it. So I'm not too worried about the little tails that are left over from my square knots when I tie my skeins of yarn together. So here I am. I did not promise you a riveting video, but I promised you an informative one. So here we are, just going through the process, loop to loop, loop to loop, down and through, loop down and through, loop down and through. You can make a little saying in your head however you want to, but you're gonna want to go down and through each loop, and then you just go back the other way that you came. This is where it comes in really handy as well. And yes, count each time to make sure that you don't have an extra loop or you're missing a loop. Mainly you don't want a loop to get tucked up underneath and miss it, because then you'll have a big hole that you don't want. So here's our 3rd skein of yarn, making our square knot. Right over left, left over right, pull it tight. And then I just continue going on. There are my tails, so I'm just pulling them through, getting them through that loop, and then putting them on the other side. You'll see, yeah, I just straighten them out on the other side. I'm going to tuck those in at the end. This is where it comes in handy to have this on a canvas. So this is what your sides look like with your loops on the side. And this is, so I'm nearing the end and I'm going to finish this blanket off. You can see here up close what it looks like with all the loops. This is, then you are going to find your first 2 loops, and you're just going to poke 1 loop inside of the next and work your way to the end of the other side. So this is your finishing touch, the finishing braid, the end of the blanket. So you're just gonna, all the loops that you've made, you're just gonna pull 1 through the next, working toward the end where your working yarn is. So my working yarn is here at this side. The reason we do that is because I'm going to use the end of the working yarn to tie it off. So we're going to cut ourselves, leave plenty of slack, put it through your last loop, and then you're going to take the end of your working yarn, pull it through, tie it around, and then slide that down, just like a sewing project, just like when you go to sew your thread at the end. And then I'm gonna cut myself, I think I left myself 6 or 8 inches here. I'm just gonna tuck this tail through and kind of sew it into the blanket so that if for some reason my knot comes untied, then I will be able to have some slack to tie it again. Now we are all done. That's the other side, so you can see the beautiful braid on this side. And it looks like rope chain on this side and then a braid on this side. See the difference? So pretty.